As you can guess, but hi everyone, welcome to another Hatton's Model Railways live stream, and today we're covering some of the fastest steam locomotives to work in the UK. We're looking at the record breakers right from the start of the age of steam to the fastest steam locomotives to ever work in the UK, and some that have broken records ever since that speed record was broken in 1938 too. There's some fantastic models of these locomotives that are available in many different scales, so this is something for all of you today. Whether you're an N-gauge modeler, double O-gauge modeler or O-gauge modeler, we do have a model of a record-breaking locomotive for you. So I thought I'd go through some of the histories for you here today, some of the claims to the record, some of the official authenticated records too, and giving you a reason to get some of these fantastic record-breaking locos into your collection. I've put a link in the description showing you most of the models that I'm showing here today. I will be going into the models in more detail and where you can pick them up too. If you've got any questions at all, don't hesitate to ask them in the chat or get in touch with our customer experience team too, who'd be more than happy to help you out. But let's get started. Let's head right back to the start of the railways. And as these first locomotives were being built, records were being broken pretty much every day, as most land transport at this time hadn't been faster than the speed of a galloping horse. So the first locomotives really were speed supreme at this time. But one of the first to really make itself known was, of course, Stephenson's rocket. The trials set up in the 1829, and this locomotive claimed a speed at those trials of 29 miles an hour. So you can see there, it's quite a slow speed by today's standards, but when you think speeds over 10 miles an hour were rare at this time to travel at, this was a complete revolution of speed at the time. So this locomotive became a record holder in its own right. The locomotive then went on to break its record, running at over 30 miles an hour in later periods. But of course, this was quickly superseded by the very quick development of locomotives at this time. But rocket still has its place as the winner of the Rainhill trials back in 1829, and of course is one of our record-breaking locomotives today. So you can pick up a model of rocket right now. You can pre-order the 2021 Hornby range model. Again, we've got variations coming. If you click the link in the description, there is a train pack with the brand new tooling rocket model included, which you can see here on the screen now. You can also pick up a kit for the rocket if you want a static model for maybe your double O-gauge museum from the Dapol range too. So have a look at the kit there, which again is included in the link in the description. Heading through the 1800s and the 19th century, with rapid locomotive development and speed ever increasing, it's quite hard to track the authenticated records of this period. There's many claims by many different companies, including the Great Western Railway with their huge single-wheel tank engines and Iron Duke class locomotives on their broad gauge system, and many other railways claiming to be the fastest too in the UK. One of these is the London North Western Railway, who participated in the late 19th century in what's known as the races to the north. These were competing with the Great Northern Railway and the North Eastern Railway on the East Coast Main Line, and the London North Western Railway and the Caledonian Railway on the West Coast Main Line to operate the fastest service between London and the central belt of Scotland. On the West Coast side, we have improved precedent locomotive. This locomotive again preserved in the National Collection for its place in the Races of the North, which it took place in the late 19th century. This model here is a forthcoming model. It's the first time Hardwick's been made available in double O-gauge form, and this is a forthcoming exclusive model made by Bachmann for locomotion models, appropriately the National Railway Museum there. So if you want a model of this locomotive in its preserved condition, you can pick one up from there. But this just shows the amount of different locomotives fighting to claim the record of fastest locomotive. There were claims of 80 miles an hour, 90 miles an hour, 105 miles an hour in some places in this period, but none of these were fully authenticated. So you couldn't prove it essentially, but at the same time, they were counted as record breakers. One of the first to claim over the 100 mile an hour, the magic 100 mile an hour barrier, was, of course, City of Truro. This is the Great Western Railway's City Class 440 locomotive, which, when working Plymouth and London, I believe, in 1904, on the 9th of May 1904, it headed over 102 miles an hour, just to the west of Taunton when heading through Whiteball Tunnel. This is a very fast locomotive, specifically ran at that speed on that day, but it's not fully provable. The records don't fully survive for this 100 mile an hour run. So although it is very likely that this locomotive ran at over 100 miles an hour, and I certainly believe it, it's not fully provable, but at the same time, it has earned its place in history and earned its place in model form too. We see here again another model commissioned by the National Railway Museum, as the locomotive is appropriately part of the National Railway Museum collection. And you can see here, sorry if we're having some issues with the sound, I'll just try and solve those while we are on air. But in the meantime, I'll keep going too. So this locomotive in model form in double O gauge is available to pick up from the National Railway Museum collection. Although at the same time, I do recommend having a look on our pre-owned section, as we do get these in from time to time. Again, if you want a static model of the City of Truro, do head over to Dapol's double O kit range. As you can see here, you can build up a model of the City of Truro for under £10. And this fits on a double O scale layout too. So do take a bit of a closer look at this one that you can see here. So we're really heading into the magic over 100 miles an hour figure now, but we still haven't got an official claim. There are other countries at this time saying that their locomotives have ran over 100 miles an hour too, but at the same time, nothing has been completely 100% proven. We need an official record. We need something that can say this has been broken. And we get it. We get it with, of course, the Flying Scotsman locomotive. This is one of Gresley's Class A1 Pacific locomotives, built in the mid-1920s for the London North Eastern Railway, the first two of the design being put into service for the previous Great Northern Railway. And these locomotives started to transform the operation of the East Coast Main Line by increasing the speed of the expresses on this route. Of course, Flying Scotsman came in 1933 and was the first official locomotive to run over 100 miles an hour. Although there were many claims to this previously, including the City of Truro locomotive, this is the first locomotive that has fully surviving records that can prove that it ran at over 100 miles an hour for quite a considerable distance. I believe it was around 2.5 miles or so. It was recorded running at over 100 miles an hour. This was back in 1933, and this really sparked the start of the war, really, shall we say, the speed war between the London North Eastern Railway on the East Coast Main Line and the London Midland Scottish Railway on the West Coast Main Line. This is really the races to the north part two, almost, really, when the grouping companies again really started to fight for the fastest trains and, of course, the UK rail speed record, which had come through at the time. So in 1933, we had the Flying Scotsman, and of course, you can pick up many different models of the Flying Scotsman in a variety of different scales. Hornby have their fully super detailed model and their railroad model available with and without the digital TTS sound, as we see here. You can pick up the N-gauge model from Depot, which I believe is scheduled for a re-release very soon, but you can pick up them in our pre-owned department too. And of course, you know, can see here. Sorry about the camera issues, guys. I know I keep cutting out occasionally. I'll just make sure I repeat what I say when I do cut out there. So apologies for the little blips that do keep happening. But we have several Flying Scotsmans available. And of course, it is one of the most famous locomotives in the world. So there are many models available. And no doubt many of you will already have a model of this locomotive on your setup too. So sticking with the A1 and A3 theme, we have the next locomotive to come up on our list, and this is Papyrus. This is a A3 version, a slightly modified version of the A1 design. This was recorded running at 108 miles an hour. This, I think the issue's getting a little worse. I'll just try and give them a solve. Bear with me 1 second. I think that should have fixed it. Right, we'll start from the top with Papyrus. So this is Papyrus. This locomotive ran at 108 miles an hour. So we have a new steam speed record holder in the UK. This locomotive actually ran at over 100 miles an hour for 12 miles in 1935. This was on a test run between London and Newcastle. And this really was the start of that period, running between the LMS and the LNER, who quickly fought for higher and higher speeds, building brand new locomotive design, introducing new locomotives into the scene to really help the sleekness and the speed running in this period too. So if you want an A3 locomotive, this is the fastest non-streamlined UK steam locomotive ever. This 108 mile an hour record hasn't been beaten for a locomotive without streamlining, officially anyway. So if you want the fastest locomotive without a streamlined case, this is the way to go that you see here. So you can pick these up in O gauge, as you can see on our Hatton's Originals model. Papyrus has been released in N gauge and double O gauge too. It's not available in that particular number at the moment. If you do keep an eye on our pre-owned section, you will see it out there. But of course, you can pick up an A3 right now from Dapol in N gauge or Hornby in double O, and maybe buy some of the etched nameplates out there to change the number on this locomotive. But now we're heading over to a brand new design. We're heading over to a design purely for speed and sleekness and taking the record. We're heading, of course, over to the A4. These were a development of the A3 locomotives designed by Gresley, with the iconic streamlined front that we see on this particular design here. And the first of and a couple of these blips, but the first of these to head into traffic was, of course, Silver Link. This locomotive. 2 seconds, guys. I'll put up a nice picture of an A4 for you while I try and sort out a couple of these issues. I do apologise for this. So this is an A4 that I'll be getting to shortly. Just keep remembering Nigel Gresley now. It's made its appearance a little bit early, but these record breakers are known for their speed, so we should be used to these arriving early. But let's head back a few years before we get to Nigel Gresley, and let's head back to Silver Link here. Now, this locomotive ran at 112 miles an hour. This was its first run, its first launch run on the main line in September 1935. And on that launch run, it did break the record of the previous locomotive there, running at 112 miles an hour. So this locomotive then really did spark that real rivalry, and the LMS responded by building the Coronation locomotives that we see here. These were a development of the Princess Royal class locomotives built in the late 1930s, and this then took the record back from the LNER by running at 114 miles an hour. This again was a couple of years after Silver Link had made its run at 112 miles an hour there too. So this locomotive, the Coronation, that's as far as the LMS got then. They did think they could push it more, but 114 miles an hour is the fastest LMS locomotive. This is where they bottomed out, shall we say. But you can pick up these streamlined coronations now. You can pick up the exact locomotive, the coronation that broke this record in the model that you see here. This is available in the LMS Caledonian Streamlined Blue that we can see here on the screen. And of course, we have several other members of the class in either the red or the blue colour schemes in double O gauge from Hornby that you can pick up now. But let's head back to those A4s. Surely there's a record we haven't fully mentioned yet. Surely we've got to say the most important one here. And that, of course, is the record, the still remaining record from the 3rd of July, 1938. This was a purely record-breaking attempt. This locomotive was sent out in secrecy with the intention of breaking and smashing the steam record, taking it back from the London Midland Scottish Railway with an aim of around 120 miles an hour or so. Gresley had been inspired by some of the records being broken in Germany by the diesel multiple units over there, and indeed the world rail record had already been taken far more than the Mallard locomotive could ever achieve, but the steam record was still there for the taking and the UK record was still there for the taking. So Mallard set off on its journey on the 3rd of July 1938 with what's known as a dynamometer car on the rear, which was there for officially measuring the speed of the locomotive. And of course, as we all know, Mallard on that run heading down Stoke Bank, heading towards Grantham and Peterborough, did achieve the magic 126 miles an hour on that day. It did cause quite extensive damage to the locomotive and it did need rebuilding afterwards. But what matters on that day is it did break that particular record. And I'm sure a lot of you already know this record is unbeaten for steam to this day. It is still remaining the fastest steam locomotive ever in the world. That record is yet to be broken. And who knows? It may be in the future. It seems quite unlikely now, but who knows what's going to happen in the future. However, if you want to pick up the fastest steam locomotive right now, you can pick up the double O gauge models from the likes of Hornby. You can pick up N-gauge models from Dapol, and of course you have the O-gauge model that's forthcoming from ourselves in the Hatton's Originals range too. And if you click the link in the description, you'll see the information down there for all the A4 models that we have, not only the record breakers, but the other members of the 34 strong class too. So we've got to the fastest now. But at the same time, there's still some more records to be achieved. There's still further locomotives to look at. One locomotive we'll see here again is another A4. You can see the plaque on the side of this locomotive, and this commemorates that it is the fastest locomotive. It's the fastest locomotive to run post-World War II, so the fastest locomotive to run post-war. And it achieved 112 miles an hour on the 23rd of May, 1959. So that's what the plaque says there on the side. Again, Sir Nigel Gresley is available in model form. You can see the O-gauge model on your screen here. And you can see the various other models we have available right now if you head over to the link in the description with the Dapol model in N-gauge and again the Hornby Railroad A4 or the full detail A4 available right now. So that takes our records over for the steam era. But there's still, again, one last record I want to feature today. It's the only steam locomotive to have ran at over 100 miles an hour in preservation. This, again, is a record breaker. And, of course, it is the brand Tornado locomotive that we see here on the screen. This locomotive was a fully new-built member of the A1 class, introduced into service in 2008. And operated on main lines and preserved railways in the UK. So this loco that you see here is a one-off. There was no original Class A1s that survived, but it was chosen to rebuild a new one. A lot of modern engineering went into this locomotive with roller bearing axles, etc., to really make it a 21st century locomotive, albeit to a 20th century design. The power was really wanted to be shown on this locomotive, and steam is usually limited to 75 miles an hour. Usually limited to 75 miles an hour on the UK's railway network. Given for a run with Tornado to achieve the magic 100 miles an hour. And this was achieved overnight on the East Coast Main Line. So this is a record-breaking locomotive in its own right, as it is the only steam locomotive to work over 100 miles an hour in the 21st century. So you can pick up a model of this record-breaking locomotive right now. This is slightly different than the other locomotives that we have available today. This is a fantastic model to include on a modern image layout, and you can get a model in N gauge from Graham Farish. You can pick up double O gauge models either from Hornby as part of their railroad range, or from time to time we do get the Bachmann model in our pre-owned section there too. So that sums up the full list of record-breaking locomotives. As you can imagine, there were many, many more that didn't have their claims authenticated, and there were many operating outside the UK too. But I wanted to show you today some of the locomotives that you can model right now from the start of railways and records broken almost 200 years ago now, or heading up right through the age of steam from the early 20th century up to the fastest locomotives and locomotives featured in the early 21st century there too. Every single model I've shown today, apart from the National Railway Museum exclusives, is available to order right now, or we do have stock of them occasionally in our pre-owned listings too. If you head over to the link in the description there, there's full information on what we have available right now. I'm sorry for the little glitches that have happened in today's stream. I hope you've still enjoyed the show. Do feel free to watch it back and just make sure you catch the little bits where I've repeated myself, and I'll have a look at some of the gremlins that are happening after the stream. But if you do want to watch some more videos in the meantime, don't hesitate to head over to our YouTube channel and our Facebook page, where we have a lot more of these videos, including model railway previews, all the railway news, and of course our skills cast sessions too. Otherwise, thanks again for watching. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.